Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. It's Crystal and I'm bringing you more true crime again today. Today, inspired by Halloween, we're going to actually look into a mystery from Canada. This person was a missing person, but there's a lot of controversy surrounding it. It has been solved, quote unquote. I'm not sure what you guys will make of it after you hear it. If you're new to my channel, hopefully you'll like, subscribe, share, hit the notification buttons. This video is made for entertainment or educational purposes only, so no hate in the comments or anything. Let's just all be good to each other. There's enough hate in the world. So today we are going to be talking about Granger Taylor. Granger Taylor was actually born October 7th, 1948, near Duncan, BC. His family had a farm in Duncan, BC, and his parents' names were Jim and Grace. I did read some articles that said that Jim died when Granger was small. I'm not sure how old, but I don't think he was a teenager yet. I know he did have a stepfather, so he has several half or step siblings, but there were 8 in the family altogether, and Granger was the oldest. Granger was awkward and shy. He has been described as eccentric. He was very withdrawn and quiet as a child, and it led to a lot of bullying for him. It was unfortunate because at the age of 12 or 13, he actually quit school in grade 8. I don't even know if he made it all the way through grade 8, but he'd had enough of people. He was also bullied because he was a really big guy. He's about 6'3", and he weighed about 240 pounds. And if you guys just give me a second, I'll put up a picture for you. This is the best picture I could find of Granger Taylor. Hopefully there's not too much of a glare. It's kind of a double exposure picture, so it's kind of really eerie. Anyway, Granger grew up obviously in the 60s and the 70s, and he was a master mechanic. He could actually take apart and build anything by the time he was 12 or 13. If they didn't have it on the farm, he could think it up and build it. He was so good that he actually went out to the woods in BC to the locomotive graveyard, took one of the locomotives back with him, one of the trains, and completely restored it to the extent that the province of BC actually bought it from him for display and tour purposes. He restored it that well. He also restored a World War II Kitty Hawk, and an American bought it in 1981 for tens of thousands of dollars. Like, he was mathematically and engineering wise a genius. Now remember, he only had a grade 8 education, but this guy could build anything. He was also a very kind man. Nobody seems to have ever had any problems with him, and he was like a big brother to people. He would often invite kids from the neighborhood to come out to the farm. He had a 21-acre farm just in Duncan, BC, and he would invite the kids to come out and help him. This kept the kids off the streets and from getting into trouble. He acted like a big brother, or like almost an uncle towards them, and he treated them very well. It wasn't anything suspicious. There was no abuse or anything like that. He was just an honest to goodness man that was good. And one of his big friends from that time was a guy named Robert Keller. Now, Robert was 15 at the time when he became good friends with Granger, and apparently they met while smoking pot together. This was one of Granger's pastimes. He did often do this. He said it helped to expand the mind. And when Granger and Robert were together, they would often talk about space. This is why I'm wearing an Asha shirt today, and aliens and all these kinds of things. He decided sometime in about 1978 or 9 to build a spaceship. At first, this spaceship was just supposed to be a think tank for him. He actually had a wood stove in it. There were couches in it. He had shelving units. He had everything that he would need in there to actually lay down and think or hang out for a while. And he did often spend a lot of time in there. Robert had called him a genius bordering on insanity because he was so smart but so withdrawn at the same point in time. He had just such a comprehension of mechanics without ever going to school for it. It was unbelievable. I really want to make this point across. He could build engines, he could build anything. And if he couldn't find the pieces on the farm to work with, he'd actually go to the dump and modify pieces. So because Star Trek was really big at this point in time, because Close Encounters of the Third Kind was really big at this time, Star Wars was really big at this time, and Granger had already had this super big interest in space, he then decided that all the neighborhood kids and him would build this spaceship. And the spaceship was actually made of two of those really big satellite receivers, like the old school ones from the 70s and 80s. They were melded together. And it actually was a really neat idea. And I can actually show you a picture of that too. Just give me 1 second. Bear with me for a minute. This is actually what the spaceship looked like. Hopefully you can see it. It actually does look like a spaceship, like the way we were taught spaceships looks like. So, in the early months of 1980, Granger started to use LSD. I don't know if he had used it previously. It was just right at this point that he was using it. His sister Grace confirms that he was using it. One of his brothers confirmed it. Robert Keller confirmed it. A couple neighbors. His family all knew that he was heavily using LSD at this point. And it got progressively worse in the summer. At around this point in time, he said that the aliens were visiting him. He said they would come to him in dreams, and they actually told him how to build like a radio communication device to talk to them. But he claimed he could also hear them in his thoughts and communicate with them that way. He said the aliens told him that he was such a good guy, they were going to pick him up in his spaceship. He and his spaceship were to go to a certain spot. They would pick him up and he would travel around the galaxies and around the universe with them for 4 years. He had to wait for a particular night for this to happen. So Granger actually made no bones about it. He told everybody in town. Everybody in town knew what was going on. There are rumors also, they're unconfirmed, so I can't say if they're true, that he may have been manic depressive or bipolar at this point in time. These are just rumors. I have no idea if they are true. I mean, sometimes the genius can be mentally ill, so it's possible, but there are also rumors going around that he was hanging out with some shadier characters on the farm because of his LSD use. Those were the only drugs that he did use that I know of, was LSD and marijuana, and apparently he smoked a lot of marijuana. So the night in question was November 29th of 1980. And on this night, Granger Taylor actually went out to eat at a place called Bob's Cafe. He was there quite often, like the neighborhood knew. And the neighborhood knew that he was going to be leaving that night. He said goodbye. He left his parents a note. And I just want to make sure that I get the wording right on this note. And I can show you the note as well. And the note said, "Dear Mother and Father, I have gone away to walk aboard an alien spaceship. As recurring dreams assured a 42-month interstellar voyage to explore the vast universe, then return. I am leaving behind all my possessions to you, as I will no longer require the use of any of them. Please use the instructions in my will as a guide to help. Love, Granger." So this is the actual note he wrote. Sorry, there is a little bit of a glare there. And he walked out of his house, and that was it. Robert Keller said that after 6:30, sometime between 6:30 and 7, he came to the house and told him it was time to go. And Robert asked him if he could go as well. And he said, "No, buddy, not this time." He made it a point for people to know that he would be back in 4 years. And the changes he made to his will were that he took out the words death and dead and replaced them with depart and departed. He also scratched out the word funeral. It looked like he was coming back, but there was also hints of something else in his note saying he wouldn't need any more possessions. Now, actually, for the whole 4 years after he disappeared, his family did keep the back door unlocked, and his room is actually the exact same way it always was. It was left untouched because they were hoping he'd return. that maybe he had gone elsewhere, something had happened. They didn't want to believe that. They didn't believe he was with the aliens, but they kind of wanted to believe he was with the aliens. There was hope. So that night was a stormy night. Now, it's been unconfirmed though, because I've heard reports, there is a documentary on this, so I suggest you guys all watch it. It's really good. It's called Spaceman, and it's from the CBC. There are reports that they couldn't find if it was rainy or not that night, but it definitely was stormy. The aliens told him that it had to be a stormy night for him to go out and do this. And a couple of his neighbors on the far side of the house said they did hear a loud boom at one point in time, but it could have just been the thunder. His family and the police were called in, and they did start looking for him, but Granger had evaporated into thin air. He was completely gone. He was 32 years old. The spaceship was gone. His pink Datsun was gone, his truck that he always drove. And just the clothes on his back were gone. Nothing else was touched. In 1986, they were doing some logging in BC. They do that quite a lot. And they found what they describe as a boom pit. In the boom pit, there were pieces of a truck, pieces of bone, and a piece of cloth from a shirt. The pieces of truck were identified by the police as Granger's, and the shirt was also identified as Granger's, so therefore they declared that the bones were Granger's. It was 1986, so DNA very much in its infancy. It was off the table. But interestingly enough, those bones were lost. So they could never do any DNA testing on them anyway. I have no idea where the bones were. I don't even know if they could tell if they were animal or human bones at this point in time, but they claimed it was Granger. No pieces of the spaceship were ever found around there. And I guess they said they had enough of a VIN number to search this truck, but they also said that there were like just little pieces. I'm not quite sure how they got the VIN number from it, but that's what they said. The boom pit is not allowed to be searched because they cannot pinpoint it any longer. It has kind of disappeared. Although, to be fair, it has been, 30 years since then, 34 years. So, I mean, a lot of changes, I'm sure, have taken place. And this was actually on Mount Provost that they found all this stuff. Granger's parents accepted that he was gone. And they did say that he, on his headstone, they had put that he died November 29th, 1980. Now, this is where the theories come up, because I say that it's a solved case, but because we could never tell what the bones were, we don't really know. And there is a lot of suspicion around it. What actually happened to Granger Taylor? Some people say it was suicide. Like his one brother is very certain that it was suicide. One of his sisters is kind of leaning towards that too. That Granger, who knew what TNT was, the farm had a lot of TNT, and actually some of the dynamite was missing from the farm that night. So they think that Granger went into the woods and blew himself up. But where's the spaceship? No pieces, remember, of the spaceship were ever found. It was gone. So where is the spaceship? Some people think he accidentally blew himself up, like he was preparing to use the dynamite to make the spaceship go into space, and he used too much, or he accidentally set it off on the wrong way, blew himself up. The coroner actually said, when they had the inquest into his death, that they figure he accidentally, or on purpose, blew himself up with the dynamite, and that's why he was no longer with us. There are some people also that think that Granger started a new life in South America, and actually Robert Keller and Granger were talking before he disappeared, and Granger said all I'd have to do was grow a beard. I could leave here. Nobody would ever find out who I was. I could just disappear. So that's a possibility. Some people think that the United States government actually kidnapped Granger and took him to Area 51 to work for them, or he went there on his own to work for them. And then there is the possibility that Granger made it into space. I know that there are a lot of people hoping that he did. He was only supposed to be gone for 4 years, But who's to say what a year is to an alien? A year could be a decade. This happens to be the 40th anniversary of Granger's disappearance. So did Granger actually go into space with the aliens? And maybe he'll be back November 29th of this year? Who's to say? Maybe he liked it so much out in space, he decided to stay there. Personally, I think that Granger accidentally blew himself up. However, at the end of the documentary, which was only released last year, it was made in 2019, there is a picture of a blue truck that was found, I believe, in 2018. Not the pink truck, it's a blue truck. And his niece identified it as Granger's. There's a lot of controversy because who's to say the bones that they found were actually Granger's? What happened to the spaceship? And were the parts of materials that they found, mechanical materials they found, actually his truck? In the end, all we can say is, what happened to Granger Taylor? I'd really love to hear what you guys think happened to Granger Taylor. Like I said, personally, I believe he accidentally blew himself up when he was trying to get into space. Robert Keller says there's no way he would have committed suicide. That wasn't the way he was. It's a very interesting case, and I'd love to hear everybody's thoughts on it. So like I said, please like, please subscribe, share if you want to, because this case is so interesting. And I hope you guys have a good and safe Halloween. See you next time. Bye.